Welcome to another episode of the Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together later about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. The theme of this season is Back to Business. The past couple of seasons have involved deep dives on horror history, and this time around we're taking it easy with all of that, and instead focusing on talking about what is most interesting to us in each of the movies that we watch. So kick back, relax, and enjoy it with us. Do you smell that?
All I can smell are full-pack dinners that Kate's baking.
Oh, that sounds kind of good, actually.
It is. What do you smell?
Well, I smell two things. Number one, it's the scent of fall. It is October. It is officially spooky season, which is kind of, like our time of year. And
Yep.
It is that brand new season aroma.
The brand new smell. Brand new season smell, man.
That we've both come to love so much. There's so much promise and enthusiasm in a new season. Because it's a new theme. It is a new set of movies. Mm-hmm. And typically we're going to change things up a little bit to keep it interesting for ourselves, because entertaining ourselves is really the point of all this.
Strictly, yeah, 100%.
Like most things that we have done in life, I think.
I'm proud of all of it, but because we got enjoyment out of it. I don't know if anyone else did, but we did.
Well, based on the listening numbers, I'd say not many people did, but that's beside the point.
Of our podcast?
Yeah.
No, man, these numbers are going crazy.
Well, yeah, our podcast so far is quite a bit more successful than anything we ever did musically, which is really hilarious to me in retrospect.
Well, it's frustrating because we literally do minimum outside of this actual podcast. Yeah, when we were the band, we were all on social media nonstop. We were
hustling.
Yeah. All the time. Yeah. And then no one would show up. And then, for this, we're just like, you know what? I don't want to post to social media anymore. Yeah. And we stop, and then the listens come through.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think people like us more when they encounter us less.
Yeah.
So do with that what you will. Mm-hmm. But we're doing something kind of rare for the Horrific this week. And that is that we are not recording a one-off standalone season kickoff. We're going to kick the season off and then just go straight into our first movie review. Because it's October. We don't have time to mess around. We got so many horror movies to watch between now and Halloween that we just don't have time for a filler episode. Because honestly, that's what those are.
Yeah, it's reset episode. It's like washing your mouth out with like whatever between tasting whatever,
Yeah, exactly. I know exactly what you mean, actually.
Thanks.
It's a thing I've seen on TV a number of times and never experienced in real life.
I half-assed that statement, but I'm glad you picked it up, man.
Absolutely. So yeah, is it probably a fitting segue? Our theme this season is not trying very hard. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually back to basics. Mm-hmm. Last season was great. I loved season 16. I loved digging into the history of horror B movies and how they changed over time and what we learned about film and what we learned about all these different directors and production companies and stuff. And that was so fascinating to me. That was also a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was a lot of reading. It was a lot of listening to podcasts. It was a lot of YouTube videos. And look, it's almost Halloween time. Mm-hmm. All I want to do right now is watch more horror movies. I don't want to read like a nerd.
You're damn right, man. Oh, yeah. Keep on going. You're on fire right now, man.
So you know what we're going to do this season? We're just going to focus on getting back to what we love doing, and that's watching horror movies and talking to each other about it.
That's what I'm talking about.
This movie selection is going to be kind of random seeming because it's just stuff we're interested in or stuff that people recommend to us or stuff that feels right. And so I think it only fitting that we are starting in our first movie that we're going to review for season 17 was a listener recommendation.
That's true. In true Thehorrific, what am I trying to say? Fashion. In true horrific fashion, we were a little late to reading emails. And so I read this email recently and I was like, oh, shoot, we're done with the B movie season. And then you had the brilliant idea of including it in this season because we're just doing what we want. We're getting back to basics.
Yeah. And I think this is a great one to start with, too, because it really would fit as just like the next movie we might have selected for last season. And this movie was a Tubi original, and so you can watch it on Tubi, but it kind of fits in with a more independent style, lower budget movie that was made and is available on a streaming service and is sort of a creative twist on some classic horror movie tropes. And the movie is called Slay, and it's from this year.
Yeah. So the person that wrote out to us about it, his name was Ryan Kroger. He specifically said he didn't want me to say his name, so I just made up a name with the guitarist's first name of Nickelback and the last name of Chad, the lead singers. Yeah. So
perfect.
Hey, shout out, Ryan. I didn't say your actual name. But he says he was explaining why we should watch this, and you'll probably catch where I was like, yeah, we're going to do it. Let's see. It's an absolute B movie. It has wall-breaking jokes, much less and more subtle than Deadpool, and it features amazing one-liners. More and better one-liners than Die Hard or Commando? I don't know. But I thought they were fantastic. The cast were all real drag queens, and they were all throwing out nasty jokes the whole time. I love it. So this guy is one of us, is what I was basically getting to. But it was the one-liners that got me, because I was like, that's where I'm here. That's why I'm here. Yeah. Especially movies. So we do appreciate the email. And guess what, Ryan? I will reply back to you today. Hey, for the record, though, his name's really not Ryan.
I know. We're all in on the joke. We're all cool people here.
But when he did recommend it, I was like, damn, how the hell did I miss this? This is a Tubi exclusive.
Yeah, I feel like it should have been advertised a lot more to us over the last 6 months, because we spent a lot of time on Tubi, and this is kind of right in the same wheelhouse of a lot of the other stuff we've been watching. So,
well, but if our listener will remember, Ryan, that at the beginning of the B movie season, I was like, I'm just trying to get Tubi to tune in my movie recommendations where they're like all, like 80s action, like B movie stuff. And so I think I messed that up. I think I went too hard with that because it's still a thing. But
yeah. So this movie, like I said, is called Slay. It is kind of like a classic low budget vampire or zombie type movie, kind of survival style, but it's in the context of a group of traveling drag queens who are sort of at the center of it. And they're the main characters in the story. Everything else kind of revolves around them and their experience with it. And then a thing that we've talked about a lot in the past is something that you see in this sort of survival type movie. And I think it really started, and you saw it a lot in more zombie type movies, but then eventually it became more of like a vampire thing. 2 is where you have people who are sort of trying to survive, but a lot of the real horror comes with them like not trusting each other or working through their own things, as much as, so it's like the environment that they're in with the other people as much as it is the threat from the outside supernatural force. So it was kind of interesting to me that in this one, it's like drag queens in a country bar, dive bar, because that's a pretty hostile environment,
Yeah, like a biker country dive bar. That's like, I mean, in United States, I could only speak of, but like it's kind of a hot topic, and those do kind of seem like the boundaries that you might not necessarily want to cross. but I thought that they handled it very well. Like they handled the tension that they have to deal with, like in a real life situation. You know that they've had to deal with those types of situations, but I felt like they put some comedy to it enough to realize that, like, yeah, we're kind of being a little stupid about all this.
So I had a question in my notes, which was this dragsploitation? Like in the way that blaxploitation was kind of almost like an inside joke. Like a lot of it was sort of making fun of it. Like blaxploitation was not about taking advantage of society's views on black people in like a negative way. Mm-hmm. It was like black filmmakers kind of poking fun at the way society treats them, and it's like an empowering thing. And I kind of wondered, was this a similar thing, but just like applied to the drag world? Because like our friend Ryan pointed out, you know, the one-liners were really funny, but a lot of it was stuff that is, it was like references that you would kind of have to be hip to get the full context of a lot of times. I mean, some of them were just dick jokes, but there was a lot of really clever stuff in there too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it comes from the same meat and bones, at least, you know, where it's like it would be strange for me to necessarily write a role for a female. I don't know what it's necessarily like to be a female. I don't know what it's, you know, any of that. Only what I've been told. So this giving them the opportunity to explain, or not to explain, but them to make a movie regarding what they do, I think is, if we want to call it exploitation, it definitely could be, but at least it's some sort of exploitation.
Yeah. It definitely seemed like it was not, because we talked about like the red exploitation movies where those were just white people portraying Indian or Native Americans as like scary monsters, you know, and that really was not like honoring of the subject matter. I feel like this one was more the other side, more like blaxploitation, in that it was like, it wasn't belittling drag queens, even though it definitely like made lots of jokes about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it was, I mean, at the meat and bones, it's about reclaiming like their representation in film. And technically, I think this, for good or bad, definitely had that. I think it was good. But yeah, I would definitely think could technically be considered that.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't want to dwell on that too long. It just was a thing that kind of stood out to me. And like, I could see this movie being made in the early 2000s in a way that was way more like demeaning.
Oh, without a doubt.
So yeah, just to kind of give an idea of what it was. But yeah, I mean, and so there was definitely like the humor aspect. This was 100% a horror comedy, but the other half of it was the horror. And I thought it got off to a great start because the opening scene was just that redneck pissing on the side of the road. And then you see something kind of fly by behind him a few times. Mm-hmm. And then you actually see like the vampire in the background. And then it attacks him. And anyway, it gets up and walks off. And then it's kind of like campy looking, but it was also like a really intense start to the movie. And then as he's walking off the van, the camper van almost hits him. And then the perspective switches to inside the van. And then you're like in the story of the Queens driving. And I thought that was a really kind of creative way to transition from like that horror movie, like intense horror movie intro to now we're going back to the normal character building part of the story so that you care about the characters before we get into the scary stuff again. Yeah. Like it flowed really smoothly, you know, from one end to the other. And I thought it was cool that they found like a creative way to do that other than just immediately dumping it into a long opening credit scene.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely have seen that start off with the action and then, you know, might cut to like another day and you hear like the birds chirping and it goes into the house where like the main family's talking or something. But this was just like, it was right there, right at the moment. But I noticed throughout the film, there were there was a few like scene changes like that used pretty creative, like cutting between scenes, blowing smoke into the lens kind of thing. And also the way they shot was like, there was a lot of long shots and like it was curving and like up. It was like, this story necessarily isn't new, but like I thought some of the film techniques and like including the intro scene was one of the things that kind of kept me in. Like, I felt the angles of being shot, was pretty great. And then just anytime they transition to another area or something like that, there's usually something, going into the black and then coming from the black to the new room or something. It would just look like a continuous shot. And I thought they did that really well, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that probably the plot was the weakest part of this movie, but the dialogue, like the jokey parts, the humor parts were like strong, but also like sarcastic enough and dark enough to fit a horror comedy. Mm-hmm. And then the way that the movie was made, I think, was probably its strength. I mean, just like you were saying, a lot of the directing and even just sort of like acknowledging that it was working on a smaller budget and incorporating that into the humor, like that scene where they're all standing in the doorway of the bar describing what they're seeing in the epic vampire fight on the outside. And one of the queens says, "Oh, you'd need a huge budget to pull this off," or something like, just like, yeah. It was really obvious that they're just describing all these crazy over the top things that are happening, but like fully acknowledging that it would have been way too expensive to actually pull that off in a convincing way. So you're just going to watch them watching it. And so it's taking what would otherwise be kind of like a non-interesting part of the movie, and then like making a joke out, like not taking themselves too seriously, and acknowledging what their limits are from a filmmaking perspective, and keeping it fun that way.
Yeah. I thought that, you're like you said, you're right. Like, the story itself was a little rough, but I thought the characters were good. Like, the characters made sense in this. All the characters in the film, like, I thought they kind of portrayed what they were portraying very well. Talking about like the bar owner and all that, but the humor pieces. It's funny because I actually had to rewind at the end because I was like, wait, did they just say what I thought they said with like you have to do it with a bigger budget? I guess I just kind of missed it, or like it didn't click the first time, and then it came back. It's like, that's what old Ryan was referencing with the breaking the wall. But and what's funny too is like initially at the beginning when they were in the bar talking to the manager or whatever he was behind the bar, the bartender, I guess, and it kind of had like, it reminded me a little bit of the same feel of like Blues Brothers of sorts, like where they're walking into a place where people are like, who is this? And then they don't necessarily win them over, but it just kind of reminds me of the Blues Brothers band. What they say when they're at the bar playing country and Western music, but the Blues Brothers band or something. I don't remember, but it had the same feel to it as well. And I was like, okay, well, this is checking off a couple boxes for me of things I enjoy. So I'm here for it.
All right. I'm going to need you to pause for just a second, and I'm going to send you a picture from my notes. And I swear this was there from me watching it. I didn't add it just now.
Yep. Yeah, 100%, man. I thought that's where it was going.
My notes just say "gay Blues Brothers?" ?
Yeah, I definitely thought that's where it was going. Like it was gonna be like a road trip thing.
Yeah. It's funny that we both like keyed in on that reference immediately.
Yeah, and then the obvious one, which I think they even kind of mentioned, but the Quentin Tarantino vampire film that I literally just went blank on, From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yes, that was another thing that I kind of liked in this one, is that we've talked before about how it kind of bothers me when anybody in a zombie movie has never heard of zombies. It's always like this brand new thing. Like this movie is taking place in the 2020s. Like everybody in it would have seen Night of the Living Dead and a million other things, Walking Dead, all of that stuff. But then they're acting like this zombie apocalypse is happening. They have no idea what it could possibly be. Come on. this one, they were like constantly referencing vampire media and lore and different myths and stuff. And yeah, I thought
brilliantly.
I think
Like, it was brilliant.
It was funny.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was not just surface level evil either. It was clearly whoever wrote this had a deep knowledge of all these different movies over time. Yeah. So overall, I mean, this one was kind of fun. It was a really easy watch. And we have decided that one thing we're going to do this season is, instead of taking so many notes, we are going to watch the movie, jot down some thoughts, and then we'll ask each other questions that we haven't had a chance to prepare for ahead of time at the end of the episode. So do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You go first.
Okay.
You ask the question first.
Yeah. Well, I got an easy one for you.
Oh, gosh.
I think. What was your favorite scene?
Ooh. Okay, so this is just a little snippet, but I thought it was my absolute favorite thing that happened in this film. And it was about 3/4 away, like, the people in the bar are fighting, zombies that are making their way in. And the local, the town fan, Jax was their name. They were fighting zombies, and they had knives like Wolverine's claws when they were fighting with them. And I loved that so much. I had to rewind to watch it again, because I was like, this is like definitely stupid. But this is definitely like, that's by this, like, it's just goofy. Like, who else would have thought of something that, like, I've seen my son, who's 3 years old, do. Like, he puts little, whatever between his fingers, like he's Wolverine. And I just thought it was brilliant, because that was happening in this serious, zombie fight.
Yeah.
But I also have to say, like, I think the big fight with the finale fight between Olive Wood and the main bad zombie, or I keep saying zombie now, bad vampire, the main bad vampire. I think I actually kind of enjoyed that, because it wasn't like this, like, insane long. Well, it wasn't this, like, everyone's hurt except for this one person fighting. It was almost like, did they even know that that's who they were fighting? Like, maybe from the looks, but I don't know. I enjoyed that whole piece of them figuring it out, of Olive figuring it out, and then, like, just having enough and taking care of business. So I think that would probably be my favorite. One's favorite scene, the other one's like just a piece of a scene, but I just really enjoyed it. What were the worst things about this movie?
Oh, man. We've been pretty positive so far.
It's okay to be.
You're going to make me the bad guy.
Yeah.
Could have guessed this was coming. The worst thing about this movie was just, I think a lot of the drama of it was kind of unconvincing. And I don't think most of the people in this movie were like movie actors. I think that there was not like a lot of movie experience in the cast of this one.
Yeah.
And that hurt it the most when it was trying to be dramatic, because I think that the plot was not super like strong around that. It was just kind of like, and now this is happening, and now this is happening, and now these people feel this way about each other and stuff. And so there were just some scenes that I felt like they were really trying to land like an emotional hook that didn't. And that was kind of distracting for me, because when this movie was being good, when this movie was being like at its best, was sort of the gore and the practical effects and the horror comedy aspects and stuff. Like, it was really good in that lane. When it tried to do this shift over into the more like dramatic side, it really lost momentum for me and made me, it just was bad enough that it took me out of the moment of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think definitely on the same page with the acting piece, but if we're watching it from the B movie lens, which we're no longer technically doing this season, it does kind of make sense. The the acting that we had.
Yeah. So I got my next question ready for you.
Yeah.
Last season, we talked about developing our own gnarly rating because like the, PG-13 or whatever, like those mean so many different things. And so we were talking about like coming up with our own way of rating horror movies.
Yeah.
And so what would be we called it the gnarly rating. Like how gnarly was this one to watch?
So gnarly from the horror, like bloody scenes, I would say 4.5 fake boobies out of 5. I thought the mayhem, the blood, what am I trying? The special effects.
Mm-hmm.
No. The gore, I thought was like, it was a lot more than what I expected from the initial, like, I know the initial scene was a little nuts, but like from them getting in the bus to the bar, just like that whole section, I didn't think you'd have as much blood and guts as you got. And so
it definitely felt like it was going to be a lot more like lighthearted and not as hard on the horror.
Yeah.
Especially with the budget where it was. Mm-hmm. I was also pretty surprised that they pulled off as much as they did from a gore perspective. But I was really impressed that they did, and I thought it worked well for the movie.
Yeah. Now, as an overall film, like I think it was probably like I definitely enjoyed watching it. I would say it's probably like a 7 out of 10 on the gnarly scale as far as like enjoyment goes, like the entertainment goes. I think it had more entertainment than anything else. Like I think it could be something that I could easily watch with like, my sister.
Your 3-year-old?
Well, maybe with like my sister who's big, my sister and brother are big RuPaul Drag Race fans, so like I feel like this could be a movie I could watch with them. So maybe my rating's a little bit skewed because of that, but yeah, I definitely gore is probably 4.5 fake boobs out of 5, and then overall entertainment wise, it would be like a 6.5 to 7 out of 10. That's what I'm giving it.
Nice. Yeah. And I think there's almost like some other dimension that I feel like we should probably take into account.
Yeah.
And that's like the, like, did it actually scare you, or like, were you checking your doors afterwards, or did you have nightmares or anything? This wasn't that type of movie at all.
Not at
like
all.
It was gory, but it was also funny, and it wasn't, nothing about it was like traumatizing from a horror perspective.
If you replace like the snot from like Ernest Scared Stupid with blood, then that's kind of like not the same feeling, because that's a special, but like it's the same kind of concept, you know what I mean? Where it's like I could enjoy, like it's funny too. Like I'm there for the characters of this as well. So, yeah. Would you recommend it, and would you watch it again? 2-parter.
This one wouldn't be high on my list to rewatch, just because the drama parts really dragged for me. But it wasn't, it was an easy movie to watch. It was an easy movie. Thank you. To have on in the background.
My bad.
That's all right. It's all right. So yeah, I don't know. I think that I would recommend it if somebody was a fan of like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, and they were looking for similar type movies where it's clearly a comedy, but also like very well versed in horror traditions. Mm-hmm. Like I think that a horror fan who's looking for a horror comedy would really enjoy this one.
Yeah.
And I think I enjoyed parts of it, but on the whole, it just wasn't my favorite because of some of the drama scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely, like, there were definitely scenes where it did drag, and it was like hour 40 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of surprising, but there were definitely like periods where it's just like, okay, like I get some of the stuff that they're doing. But yeah, that was the big bummer with it.
Yeah. So I can't remember if it was if we were recording or if it made it into an episode or if this was just when we were talking before. But you asked me something about if I thought like woke horror was a thing. And I think this kind of was, but not in the way that I would have imagined it when you asked me that question initially. Because I think that this one definitely, it had themes or messages that it was trying to get through as far as, acceptance of people who live differently and, just like a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Built into it. And it was also like very funny, but there were the super kind of dramatic parts where it's like, well, if we left this town, who would be here to fight to change the viewpoints and stuff like that? And I feel like it was very much coming from that view of the world. And so I don't remember how I answered last time, but maybe this was woke horror. Okay. I mean, is that how you perceived it?
I think so, but I think this one was almost trying to bridge a gap between what they needed to, which was the far sides that that are dealing with this main issue. But
I think that this one was not obnoxious.
It was,
which I think is what
obnoxious.
I had assumed you meant when you were asking before about woke horror. This one I think was funny enough that it kind of, it's like, okay, cool. Like I hear what you're saying and you're doing it in a way that's entertaining and funny. And I think that's actually a really, really effective way to make a point. And we've talked for a long time about how with music, like, yeah, I'm not always going to agree with the politics of the musician that I'm listening to, but if they can present their side or their thoughts on something in like this creative and like moving way that resonates with you, that's like a really powerful way of doing it, as opposed to just like yelling at people. And so when people can use art to communicate their point of view on something, I think that's always an interesting thing when it's done well.
Well, and the last thing that I'll have to say about this is myself quoting Ryan, our emailer. I'm also on the conservative side politically, so liking this movie so much surprised me. There were even a handful of characters who actually developed, which is pretty impressive. So like even someone that's more on the conservative side sees that as well and can enjoy this movie. I think it's mission accomplished for the filmmakers. So whether if everyone got it or needed to like watch it to help with their views or not, it does seem like it's, making it where, hey, we can like laugh about these things. Like, again, it's okay to laugh about these things. It's okay to talk about these things and not, granted, they were dealing with zombies too, but I mean, vampires. I think it was mission. You so fucking mad right now. I'm so sorry about that, Ryan. I think it's mission accomplished by the movie makers. I think that not everyone was going to enjoy it. Well, for one, because they're just biased and they're not going to watch it. Two, they're going to enjoy it because they're just watching a horror film. Or three, they're going to watch it and be like, hey, it's not that bad. Is that how it always goes?
I was actually trying to play through in my mind, like, wait, is that just all the options? Did you just list all the things?
What else would there be?
It's like, well, it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. Like,
you're damn right.
Yeah, that is the truth, my friend.
In order to gain trust, you must trust the game.
I feel like we are in mid-season form already. This is great. Mm-hmm. Happy beginning of season 17 to all who celebrate.
Shout out Ryan Kroger.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.